She walked into the office like any other intern, badge clipped, notebook in hand, a quiet smile hiding a storm. No one knew her last name carried power, or that her eyes had seen boardrooms where billion-dollar decisions were made. To them, she was just another diversity hire. The jokes started early, the whispers louder, the looks sharper. But every insult, every smug smirk, was being recorded, because she wasn't there to learn spreadsheets. She was there to expose something rotten. And when the truth came out, no one in that company would ever forget her name. They thought she was powerless, but they had no idea who they were really dealing with. By 8:30 a.m., Maya had already slipped into her role. The plain gray blazer, the modest heels, the nervous smile, all perfectly rehearsed. To the employees of Sterling and Row Capital, she was just another intern desperate for a foot in the door. In truth, she was the daughter of the company's founder, the woman whose signature could end careers with a single pen stroke. But that secret stayed buried behind a practiced humility. Her first day began like any other. Polite introductions, fake smiles, and sidelong glances that said more than words ever could. She noticed how eyes lingered on her skin, how her name, Maya Washington, made conversations pause for half a second too long. Still, she said nothing. Every moment, every tone, every careless act of exclusion. She was watching, recording, remembering. Behind her calm expression, she was mapping the cracks in the company her father built, the quiet rot of prejudice masked by polished professionalism. What began as subtle disrespect soon revealed itself as something much darker, an unspoken system designed to keep people like her at the bottom. But Maya wasn't there to endure it. She was there to expose it. And soon, the people who underestimated her would realize the intern they mocked was about to become their biggest reckoning yet. By noon, the mask of corporate civility had started to slip. The laughter that followed Maya down the hallway wasn't just about her inexperience. It was about who they thought she was. Intern from the diversity program, someone whispered as she passed. She didn't turn her head. She didn't need to. She could feel their judgment pressing against her like static. In the meeting rooms, she was given the leftover chairs near the door, never the table. Her ideas were met with nods that dissolved into condescension seconds later. The same words, repeated by someone else minutes later, earned applause. It was subtle, coded, practiced, the kind of everyday racism that hides behind smiles and HR-approved language. But Maya didn't react. She was cataloging everything, every smirk, every dismissive comment, every lie disguised as professionalism. When Derek Williams, the regional director, called her kiddo in front of the entire finance team, laughter filled the room like applause for cruelty. The other interns, desperate to fit in, followed his lead. Jennifer Walsh, the Yale graduate with perfect hair and a phone that never stopped recording, became the ringleader. She streamed Maya's every move under the hashtag corporate reality check, turning humiliation into entertainment. Maya's coffee spills and small mistakes were clipped and shared, feeding an audience that laughed from the safety of their screens. By mid-afternoon, she was trending, unknowingly turned into a symbol of mockery. But while they laughed, she was working. In between errands and menial tasks, Maya studied their systems, learned their workflows, memorized their access codes. Her photographic memory absorbed everything. When she was told to make copies, she copied more than they knew: emails, transaction records, client logs. Each document was another piece of evidence, another thread in the web she was spinning. Behind every spreadsheet was a story. Underpaid minority employees, manipulated evaluations, promotions denied with fabricated performance concerns. The cruelty escalated. Derek began orchestrating public tests to break her composure. He asked her to present complex financial data she'd never seen, only to mock her supposed ignorance. But she didn't falter. She stood still, calm, her voice measured. She spoke the language of finance fluently, effortlessly. And in that silence that followed, Derek's smirk cracked for the first time. The power dynamic shifted, barely perceptible, but she felt it. Still, the backlash came fast. Her assignments doubled, her access restricted. Her workspace moved to a windowless copy room in the back of the floor. There, among the humming machines and forgotten paperwork, she found an unlikely ally, Marcus. the night security guard. He recognized her face from somewhere he couldn't place. He saw the quiet strength in her eyes, the restraint in her silence. When Jennifer's live stream hit 10,000 views, Marcus approached her with concern. "They're planning something," he said quietly. "I overheard Derek talking to HR. They're setting you up for termination." Maya didn't flinch. She simply nodded, as though she had been expecting it. By 3 p.m., whispers were spreading through the office. HR was preparing documentation for policy violations. Derek had already started circulating rumors, claims that Maya had accessed confidential files, broken security protocols, even fabricated performance data. The irony wasn't lost on her. She had evidence of him doing far worse. Still, she stayed silent, finishing her tasks, her face unreadable. At 4 p.m., she walked past Derek's office just as he was meeting with department heads. Through the crack in the door, she heard her name. "She's got to go. She's a liability," he said. "We'll make it look clean." The laughter that followed burned itself into her memory. That was the moment she knew. It wasn't just about her. It was about everyone like her, everyone who'd ever been underestimated, overlooked, or silenced. Her phone buzzed. A message from her father's private secretary. Board meeting confirmed for 6 p.m. All executives attending. Maya's reflection caught in the glass wall. A composed intern on the outside, but in her eyes, something unstoppable was forming. She walked back to her desk, calm as ever. Every camera, every document, every word spoken today. She had it all. And when the time came, she'd use it. Because this wasn't just a fight for her dignity. It was an expose waiting to erupt across the entire company. If Derek and his team thought they were untouchable, they were about to find out just how wrong they were. At exactly 5:45 p.m., the building began to hum with nervous energy. Word had spread. Something was happening on the top floor. The intern everyone mocked was about to face off with a man who ruled this company like a king. Inside the glass conference room, Derek Williams stood tall, his confidence rehearsed, his smile sharp enough to cut. HR sat beside him with a stack of papers, termination forms. The other interns were gathered like witnesses at a public execution. Maya entered quietly, setting her worn portfolio on the table. No blazer now, no pretense. Just quiet authority in her eyes. "Ms. Washington," Derek began, the condescension in his tone unmistakable. "This meeting is to address your recent violations of company policy." The words hit like gavel strikes. Unauthorized access, disruptive behavior, confidential data breaches. He spoke fast, layering accusations with false sincerity. Around the room, heads nodded, some in fear, some in complicity. Jennifer kept her phone low, recording again, but this time her hands trembled. Maya didn't defend herself. She didn't need to. Instead, she reached into her portfolio, pulling out a thin silver drive. With a click, she connected it to the conference screen. The room went dark for a moment before lighting up with rows of emails, time-stamped and signed, Derek's own correspondence. Each message projected the truth, louder than any words could. Reject candidate to urban. Keep minority hires off client-facing roles. We're not running a charity. The silence that followed was suffocating. The blood drained from Derek's face. He lunged toward the laptop, shouting about privacy and slander, but the damage was already done. Every intern, every department head, even HR watched as months of buried racism played out on-screen in Derek's own words. Maya stood still, her voice calm but heavy with conviction. She recited company statutes, federal laws, anti-discrimination codes, all from memory. Every legal term landed like a hammer. She wasn't just an intern anymore. She was the mirror they couldn't look away from. Derek's arrogance began to crumble. His shouts turned to stammers. You can't do this," he barked, but before he could reach the laptop again, the door opened. Marcus stepped inside, flanked by security. Behind them came Patricia Hayes, HR's lead counsel, holding a folder marked Board Directive. "Maya Elizabeth Washington," Patricia said quietly. "The board has authorized full executive authority for immediate review." The name hit like thunder. Derek froze. The interns looked at each other in shock. Jennifer's camera caught his face as realization dawned. Washington, the name on every paycheck, every document, every building plaque. The daughter of the CEO, the heir to the empire. The woman he'd mocked all day now stood over him like a verdict made flesh. Maya removed her lanyard, revealing an executive badge gleaming under the fluorescent light. "This isn't about revenge," she said softly, her tone steady, almost mournful. "It's about accountability." The files on screen shifted again, video footage, security logs, transcripts, all showing a pattern of bias, cover-ups, and deceit. It wasn't just Derek. Department heads, HR staff, senior managers, all complicit. The system they built to protect themselves was now the evidence that would dismantle them. Derek's voice broke into desperation. "You can't ruin me for this," he shouted, sweat collecting at his collar. "I built this company." But Maya's response was simple, devastating. "No, my father built this company. You just poisoned it." The entire room went still. The walls of prestige and privilege that once insulated them now felt like a trap closing in. Phones buzzed with notifications as live footage leaked online. The world was watching, and this boardroom had become a courtroom. Then came the moment no one expected. Maya turned the screen one final time to a photo of the company's first black analyst, fired in 2012 for insubordination. A note attached read, "Not client appropriate." Her father's handwriting circled the name with one word, rehire. The truth had come full circle. Years of buried injustice were now uncovered for everyone to see. The room erupted into chaos. Derek shouting, others pleading, HR scrambling to save themselves, but Maya didn't flinch. She gathered her portfolio, turned toward the window overlooking the city, and let the silence settle like dust after storm. In that moment, she realized this wasn't just a reckoning for a company. It was a message for every room where silence had once been mistaken for weakness. But this story wasn't over yet, because what Maya did next would shock everyone and change the company forever. When the boardroom doors finally opened, the air outside felt heavier, charged with the weight of everything that had just unfolded. Derek Williams was escorted out in silence, his once commanding presence reduced to a shadow of disbelief. One by one, the other managers who had laughed, ignored, or participated in the system followed behind him. HR representatives took statements, attorneys took notes, and the entire office watched as a hierarchy they thought untouchable crumbled before their eyes. But Maya didn't smile. There was no satisfaction in watching justice unfold this way, only the deep ache of knowing how many people had been broken before the world decided to notice. By the next morning, the story was everywhere. Intern exposes racism at Sterling and Row Capital dominated headlines across every platform. Clips of the confrontation went viral, shared millions of times. Some viewers called her a hero. Others accused her of setting people up. But Maya didn't respond to any of it. She sat alone in her father's office, staring out over the skyline, the city glowing like a mirage of progress. For all the praise, she knew the truth. What she did wasn't extraordinary. It was necessary. In the weeks that followed, Sterling and Rowe announced sweeping reforms, diversity audits, anti-bias leadership programs, public apologies. But Maya understood that real change couldn't be forced by policy alone. It had to begin in the spaces people thought no one was watching. The break rooms, the interviews, the board meetings where silence became complicity. She began meeting privately with employees who had been overlooked for years, giving them a platform, listening to their stories. The janitor who'd once stopped to ask if she was okay now sat on the new Employee Advisory Council. Jennifer, the intern whose phone had broadcast Maya's humiliation, came forward publicly to acknowledge her part in the toxic culture, dedicating herself to anti-bullying advocacy work. Even Marcus, the security guard, was promoted ahead of building operations, a quiet nod to the people who see everything but are too often ignored. But for Maya, the real victory was internal. She had carried the weight of expectation her whole life. Being the CEO's daughter, being black in a world that judged her before she spoke, being proof of what resilience could look like. Yet, for the first time, she felt something new. Peace. Not because the system had changed overnight, but because she had refused to be silent in the face of injustice disguised as professionalism. Her courage had torn a hole through the illusion of equality that so many companies hide behind. And in that truth, there was power. Months later, during a leadership summit, she stood before a packed auditorium filled with executives from across the country. Her words were measured, her tone calm, but her message cut deep. Racism doesn't always shout, she said. Sometimes it whispers through promotions denied, through jokes passed off as harmless, through the silence of people who know better but choose comfort over courage. The room was still. For a moment, the masks dropped, and the audience saw themselves in the reflection of her story. When she stepped off the stage, her phone buzzed. A message from her father. "Proud of you. Keep going." She smiled faintly, slipping the phone into her pocket. This wasn't about legacy anymore. It was about the future, about the next young black woman walking into an office full of assumptions, hoping to be seen for her worth rather than her skin. Maya knew there would be more battles ahead, more boardrooms to confront, more silences to break. But this was the beginning of something larger than a single company. It was a shift in awareness, a reminder that equality isn't a policy, it's a practice. Because at the end of the day, justice doesn't begin when the world is watching. It begins when one person decides enough is enough. And the question that lingers long after her story ends is the one that matters most. How many more times will people have to fight to prove their humanity before we finally change the system that keeps denying it?